All right, kids, here we are. It's another episode of Camera and Flask, episode 37, though Ben will argue that until the end of time. I think he thinks that we're at like episode 117 already, and that we should be, who knows what he thinks.
We're just at 38. That's where we actually are.
38. Just so you know, this could be the last episode of Camera and Flask. I'm kidding, but I'm saying that because Hangouts on Air is going away, and unless I get Caleb to step in and give me a little bit of help, it could all go downhill from here. That is for sure, but it won't. We'll make it work. It's going to be okay. I'm excited. And it is Wednesday, July 31st, so just a day shy of the 1st of August. And I am excited that everybody's here. We've already got quite a lot of people here in the chat. 360 Grad, Shiznuts, Chris Cohn. We've got Guillermo Montesinos, a.k.a. Memo Montesinos. Bill Pan, Bart Johnson Productions, Larry Haygood. We've got David and all the regulars and a couple of new people or newish people who are coming back to the chat. And here I am with the lads. As always, we do this on Wednesdays at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, 11 p.m. currently British Summer Time, and then we are midnight in the Czech Republic. Where are you, Ben, by the way?
I'm in my office in the Czech Republic.
Oh, I like this. Okay. And then Caleb Pike, who has just come off of an epic, is this only your second live stream with Cassie on the channel?
Yeah, only the second time.
It was good. I was watching, and it was great to see you guys interacting with everybody in the chat, with each other, and there was some great topics that came up over there. So that was good.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. For those who came on over, thank you for surviving the link struggles. I apologize.
I apologize.
YouTube did us a number apparently.
Yeah. So here we are, and Cassie's in the chat. What's up, Cassie? It was great to see you guys. It was awesome, and I'm looking forward to our next Lotus of Siam. So Wednesday it is. Just a little bit of housekeeping here, gents. I'm going to be traveling to the UK next Tuesday, arriving Wednesday. So I'm going to probably call it right now and say that our next episode is going to be 2 weeks from now. And then just let everybody in the chat know that. And it's only because I probably won't have access to and time to get a camera set up. I will be with the family on that day in London, and it'll be a little bit tricky. So you guys all right with that? Is that going to be okay?
Sure. Yeah.
All right, cool. Good. So what we do here, every week we chat about the industry, we chat about gear, we chat about pretty much anything that we want to. But the first thing that we do is we decide on what we're going to have to drink. And I think we're going to, he just got done with a long live stream. And even though you're later, Ben, I'm going to jump over to Caleb here because I want to see, I think that Caleb is due for a drink right now. And what's it going to be? Come on.
I just grabbed something on the way down. See if I
okay.
Can, not show it off. Got 16 millimeters, so it's difficult. And it's nothing interesting. It's Evan Williams, everyone.
Oh,
I've never had that.
Look how full that bad boy is.
Exactly. That's 3/4 full.
Yes, sir.
Practically a full bottle, for sure.
Wow.
There you go.
Yeah.
So I'm going to crack this puppy open.
Good.
And we'll get the party started.
You start pouring. And Ben, what you got for us today?
I am on Rioja today. I already cracked this bottle to have with my dinner, and come on, kick in.
There we go. Oh,
there we go. We got it.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm already halfway down this, so that's what I'm on. It's very good. It's what my dad brought last week.
Good. I have a mason jar here, and I'm going to keep it very Oregon today, and I am not going to go into the category of whiskey or tequila, and I'm going to have a Freem out of Hood River, and they make excellent beers. This one is the Jammy Pale Ale, and I've had it on tap, but I don't think I've ever had it out of the bottle. So I was at the store, and so I'm going to have a beer. And that's what it's going to be. It's a little warm outside, and I think it's an appropriate drink for today's episode. Let me just pour just a little bit so we can do our little cheers, and then we can get into the conversation. Cheers, gentlemen, and to everybody in the chat.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you for joining us, guys.
Okay, so Caleb, do you want to
just hold the beer up again just for a second for me, Jem? Sorry.
Yeah.
In the glass or the jar. Oh, interesting. Kind of looks like the first wee of the morning, but it's
well, yeah. With your nights out, it's basically, I would say that it's categorically, they call it a jammy pale ale, but it definitely sits in a lighter, like a hazy IPA is kind of what you're getting out of this, which is why it looks like that. And it's yeah, it's good stuff. Very nice, very refreshing, a little grapefruity, as it should be on a summer afternoon. Okay, so Caleb, want to do some shout outs or just anything on the chat while I just finish we get going?
Just want to start with a comment near the bottom here from Wannabe. Cut to the chase. How obsolete am I? I love it. Yeah, so first and last in the chat. Wannabe Films. What's going on, Wayne? Harrison. Alex Minor. And Alex, I apologize. You did a donation and I did not shout it out. You are a champion among men. 360 grad. Shiznuts. Where's part-time? We got to complete the collection.
Got Sky London here, though.
Alexander. Tony. Yep. We got Ben. We got Chris. What's up, Chris? Good to see you, dude. Harrison, Bart, Guillermo, Bill, and Larry, and David, and just the list goes on and on. It's good stuff.
Yeah, nothing wrong with Diet Coke, Sky London, by the way. Nothing wrong with that. You don't have to drink the alcoholic beverage every single time. So you got to do what you got to do. Except for that stuff turns to formaldehyde at a certain temperature. So just remember that. Okay? Let's just say. I'm just saying. Okay. There you go. Good. Well, anything from you, Ben, before we jump into this? You want to say any comments you're seeing come through?
Well, Dan's asking where you're going in the UK, and I believe you're driving more or less right past the end of his road. So,
awesome.
if you're needing somewhere to stay halfway down the country, he lives in the Midlands, like the North Midlands.
Cool.
So when you're streaming down the M6 between London and Scotland.
At the M&S, I'll be there.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, stopping in. Okay. It sounds like a MacBook Pro keyboard, which I just got replaced on mine. I don't know. There was like some clicking noises.
Oh, sorry. I'm in between studios, so I'm just like grabbing whatever keyboard I can find. Everything's everywhere. So it's Cherry MX Blues today.
That new space, by the way, pretty amazing. And you're standing up, and it's a good thing. Your posture, unlike mine, has already improved because you're standing up in your studio. I have the posture of an 80-year-old man, but let's just get into this now and start discussing what this ridiculous topic is that I came up with for episode 37, which is the obsolescence of us as content creators, video producers, DPs, whatever it's going to be. And why did I bring this up? Because I think about strange things having to check. What's wrong?
What is going on? My mute button doesn't work. If you hear past 3, let me know. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, we can hear you.
6.
Yeah.
Get out of here.
Yeah. Wait, does mine work? Are you ready?
No wonder you guys are talking about my keyboard. I'm like, how do they know?
That's the loudest keyboard.
Wait for it. It's about to get real juicy when it comes to audio.
Check 1 2. Test 1 2.
Oh, now you sound now you sound like a radio voice.
There we go. Okay.
Now, were you actually muting, or did you just pretend that you were speaking?
That was actually a mute. Yeah.
That's a beautiful thing.
I'm glad we caught that one, so I don't, secretly tell Ben my gem jokes.
Silent farting for you today. So there you go.
Okay. And carry on. I'm so sorry.
It's fine. I don't have any train of thought. It doesn't even matter. Who cares? What was I saying? I have no idea. No, I was saying that I think about things, and I think about stuff related to what we do for a living a lot. And we are all people who are creating content full time in very different ways. I think we all have our own buckets in terms of what we do. But I also think about things like this a lot, and I think about sort of my history in industries. And I started out in the 90s, believe it or not, when there was really a very much a big transitioning happening between graphic design, typesetting, stats, and then transitioning to desktop publishing is what it was called. But really, on the mid to high end, it was a bunch of creative professionals who were transitioning to Illustrator, Quark Express, Photoshop, and they were using those tools as their design tools as opposed to what they were using traditionally prior to that. So sort of going from analog to digital. And then there was, of course, a big impact on that industry because the people who were in the analog industry who didn't want to transition to the digital side lost their jobs. And some of that work also started to come in-house to companies because they said, newsletter, we don't need to hire a freaking graphic design firm to create a newsletter. We'll just create that newsletter on our PC or on our Mac. And they would start to do that, not generally using Quark Express, but you know, a page layout program that was more dumbed down. And then when I started to get into the video business, we, of course, had probably a very different scenario for many of us. For me, it was there were people on the high end, and some of them I was hiring or working with who were shooting on DigiBeta and high-end camera systems. They were editing on Avid. And then Mini DV came to the market, and this was the first time that I could truly afford getting into camera systems. So I was sort of on that other side of it, but we were still getting into it as creative professionals. And now what's happening is we're getting phones that very soon, without question, will start to shoot in a portrait or pseudo wide aperture mode in video as opposed to just stills. And tools like the Wireless Go make wireless transmitting and receiving audio quite easy for the user. And we're starting to see, I think, another phase of tools that are going to be made available to people to create what is ubiquitous to communication now, which is video. And I wanted to talk about how that's going to impact us as content creators. How has it possibly already impacted us? And have a discussion with you gents and the people in the chat about that. I hope that makes sense. I hope I gave a little bit of a setup to that. It was probably a little too long, but Ben, what do you got?
I think that it's what happened with photography as well as the DTP thing. That was certainly, but to some degrees that came back, and all of that went in-house. As you were saying, everyone now has a camera on them all the time. And for a lot of things that maybe people would have got in a Pro for before, the mobile phone is good enough. And you see an awful lot of PR stuff that gets done that way. I guess the way that video is at the moment, I feel it's not gone the same way yet, but it's certainly heading that way because the skill set required is a little deeper, I guess, because there's more to it in terms of the production and the post. But it's certainly going to go that way. Whether that's something that's replacing us or whether there's opportunity there for us, which there certainly is, in terms of training those people for that. And I found with the photography side of things that there were still things that I was getting. And in some ways, there was a little dip when that all started, but it came back again. I think there was a realization that there was some value in having somebody who really knew what they were doing and who'd got experience with this stuff coming in to do that work. And for the day-to-day stuff that they were needing to churn out on social media day in, day out, they're obviously doing a lot of that themselves in-house. So I see video going in the same way. It's inevitable.
Okay.
And that's kind of my take on it initially, I guess.
Well, I have a question for you, Caleb, because, you know, you were creating content on a corporate level and you were starting to and eventually started to do a lot more of content creation on your channel, and you started to create a lot of educational content, gear content. Did you make the decision to move from doing production for outside clients to doing just your own production because your channel was growing, or did you do it because you saw a change in the work that was coming to you? What made you decide when you transitioned to kind of full-time what you do now to make you do that?
I don't think I was nearly smart enough to. Is volume okay, by the way?
Yeah, mine too.
Good. Okay, good.
Yeah, your volume's great.
Yeah, I wasn't that smart. It was just the corporate stuff, while I enjoyed and it had a nice check at the end of the day. I was wanting to learn more, and I feel like you can only learn so much on the job. Like, you can learn a lot, but as you guys both know, when you get there, you're on the clock, man, to get an interview setup done, to nail the interview, and you want to spend time in the interview, not setting up for the interview. Sure. So switching over to the channel, because it was talking about video production, allowed me to tinker more and mess around, trying to figure stuff out, try new things, see what worked, didn't. And I kind of mentioned it in my last stream, but like, I got tired of my knees hurting like every single day. And just, as you guys also know, and a lot of people in the chat that I know personally have been in production forever, it just really works you over time, physically, mentally, all the client stuff you go through. But there was also that content piece that it was different. It was kind of fresh. It was, at the time when I started, what we have today was not even a thing. Companies weren't like bidding Instagram story projects, like everything's different now. So many companies are focused on content creation for different, social media networks, and marketing's completely different. Back when I started, it was, 20,000 plus for an ad, or, for us lower, not bottom feeders, but the lower guys, it's, web videos, internal stuff, all that fun stuff. So.
Okay. So that was really how you transitioned to that. So it was more based on your interest in what you wanted to do, rather than being driven by lack of work from corporate or other things.
But what is interesting, and to go toward the point I believe we're talking about here, is I did notice, even though I was wanting to wind down the video work, I never cut off my work. It slowly began to die and shrivel up. When I first started, I had like 3 or 4 producer director types that I worked with. And by the end, it was 1. They all slowly, had to work harder, make less. And it was like painful to watch with a lot of these guys, because they had to start taking cheaper jobs. And then that's just a deadly death spiral of, less and less and less. And then they're begging me to, be a camera operator for almost free. And it's tough. We talked about this in the past. For those who want to check it out, that stream we did on, what did we talk about? We talked about in-house. Yep. How everything's going in-house,
Well, I think that was probably, if we looked at the timeline there, Caleb, it's probably very similar to the transition of when that started to happen a lot, because there wasn't any golden age of creating internet-based content. There were a few companies that were probably gobbling up a lot of the work. But the reality is that there were a lot of independent producers. There were a lot of smaller production companies that were getting steady work from corporate clients. And when those corporate clients started to realize, especially when YouTube exploded, that they can have a channel, they can host video for free, and they wanted to and needed to start to produce a lot more video-based content, it made a lot of sense to bring people in-house in order to do that, as opposed to putting an outside company on retainer. So there was a huge transition that happened there. At the same time, did you guys watch the documentary Off the Tracks, which has to do with Final Cut Pro 10? There's an abridged version. It isn't that long. It's about 20, 25 minutes long or something like that. It's kind of fascinating because I had a lot of discussions with people when Final Cut Pro 10 came out and for the next year or two after its release. And I don't think that Apple's intention was to ever make that a product. They did it in completely the wrong way. I mean, they totally effed everything up, in my opinion. But they didn't necessarily create that product to just cater to the existing user base. They looked at where video was going as from an editing standpoint and a digital standpoint, and they said, you know, we're going to create a tool here that will be, yes, different than other tools are in terms of NLEs, but we can also grow a market, which I think, Caleb, you and I would probably agree that there's a huge user base right now who are content creators that are creating content for YouTube, both as YouTubers or creators, and then also in the corporate realm, who are using Final Cut as their NLE. And that's not what this conversation is about, but it is about the fact that, you know, the joke of iMovie Pro isn't necessarily a joke anymore, because that has matured a lot in terms of an application, and their user base, while they lost a lot of users initially, I would venture to guess, even though they're not professionals who are filling out surveys, that there's just a gigantic Final Cut Pro 10 user base, and they are future content creators. And how will that impact us in the future as well? Any thoughts on that, gentlemen?
Ben? Got it?
And that's not to lift up Final Cut Pro 10. I'm bringing it up as that there's tools now that are allowing that people have access to. Yeah.
And it was, when that came out, and it was, for all its myriad of problems and the way that it was launched, the way that it was kind of a completely alien way of working to everyone who'd been doing that up to that point. But it's a very intuitive piece of kit. And for someone who's starting out, it really does let you get straight into it very, very quickly. So that was clearly where they were heading. And yeah, obviously the amount of content that's being created on a daily basis by, I mean, I don't even know. I've read some stat recently about the number of hours that are uploaded to YouTube daily. Do you know what this is, Caleb? Because I know this is kind of more your realm.
It's always mind-boggling, but it's every day now it's getting more and more insane. I'll look it up for us.
Something like 100 years of footage is uploaded like every day or something ridiculous.
Oh my goodness.
That's maybe a gross exaggeration, but it's something along those lines. So it's where all that's going. But then I suppose the other bit that's interesting to all this, as well as the editing stuff, it's that production side of things that are making things easier for people to do in-house, and how much that not only sort of takes away the work that we do now, but also just slims that down to making things possible for, I mean, I often work on my own anyway, but it really pulls crews down to an absolute minimum. So when we were thinking about things like I've just been speccing a job actually for 360 stuff, and then looking at the ways that can all be reframed, and that you shoot that stuff, you can set that up in a fairly automated way, and then you can reframe to anywhere within that 360-degree sphere.
Right.
And when you're talking about now, there's that series of cameras which are reasonably affordable, sort of $4,000 for things like the Insta360 Pro 2. That's 8K, so you're actually getting, you know, a normal 16:9 window within that at reasonable resolution now. It's still not quite there, but that's clearly going to be an option for people to do, and to be able to, you know, that old fix it in post thing, but to be able to really do a lot of that work that we would do as DPs now, that thing that we're making those decisions as how we're framing things, will be able to be done in post in a similar way to the Lytro camera.
Yep. Just a shout out. I know you gave one DSLR video shooter, Mr. Caleb, but we got grip tips in the house. Great channel, great content. So if you haven't checked that out, then definitely head over. I have watched many, so thanks for stopping by to the live stream and hanging out in the chat. I'd love to hear from you people. Yeah, it's good stuff. So Caleb, we talk about we talk about people who are in-house, and we talk about sort of the thing that's going on that are the obviouses. But do you feel to a certain degree or not that this was inevitable because so much content is being created right now that there's no way that the old guard or the original gangsters could keep going with creating the content for everybody anyway. I mean, it seems to me that there's no way that it would ever stay the way it was, where you had a traditional, you're a company, small, medium, large, you need a video, you go and look for a video production company. That's just not a future that I see anymore. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to be obsolete. I just think, what are your viewpoints on all of that stuff?
I mean, yeah, it's interesting. Once you start diving into it, there's so many factors. But I can think of at least 5 guys who started on a T2i and are now shooting Alexa Minis. But that generation is so short-lived, I feel. A lot of the guys started out roughly when I did. But because technology was so affordable, they were able to get in and like really, really a million times more talented than I am. Excuse me. Really talented guys who were able to take a cheap camera, make some amazing stuff, and then quickly work their way up. But it sucks that that's not going to be a thing anymore. I don't think, like, for a long term. I feel like it's going to be bottom feeder and then Hollywood or Marvel TV shows working at Disney.
But isn't the middle ground YouTube?
Oh, absolutely. And like, part of me wishes I had some free time to like start another side business doing Instagram stories. Like, if I was a young kid really into, video, I feel a great little business would be nail the top-down B-roll sector and just make a killing doing quick turnarounds on Instagram ads, But yeah, content for sure is kind of that middle ground. And it's totally insane. These numbers I pulled up for YouTube, 1.3 billion hours uploaded every minute.
No.
Wow.
Yes.
No.
Yep.
Come
1.3 billion hours.
So mine was not a gross exaggeration at all. It was a massive underestimation.
And that stat is getting the curve is wild on that thing. YouTube gets over 30 million visitors a day. 5 billion videos are watched every day. So that's a lot.
Wow.
That's crazy. So here's an interesting. Wannabe Film says, I think agencies are in more trouble than production companies. They all brought production in-house like me, but the markup is still too high. I think that's got to be true. And the agency model is really hurting. I mean, you do know, everybody out there, that agencies are sometimes paying like net 180, like 3 to 6 months, 90 to 180 in terms of paying you to do your work. And how do you sustain as a production company in that type of situation as well, unless you are in fact in-house. But let's look at the bright side here. Let's look at the up, which is that middle tier. Like, Ben, what types of content are you watching when you go onto YouTube? And what type of content are you able to access now that, let's say, even 2 or 3 years ago was not readily available?
Well, it's anything. I suppose YouTube is just your kind of manual for life, for work stuff. So case in point, today I have been I've been editing something and I've had a real problem with some skin tone stuff. So I've been viewing tutorials on Resolve for solving one very specific problem, getting kind of detail in skin to match and
Avery Peck,
smoothing that out. I've watched several videos. It's definitely some of his.
That guy's great.
Casey Farris, I can't remember who else. Mixing Light, loads of different people. So for that, but not only, but I use it for everything. It's if I'm putting in a watering system in the garden at the moment. So I look at it for that. If I want to know how to change the timing belts on my Ducati, I use it for that. It's just my life manual. That's what YouTube is now. It's not just work stuff and that kind of higher end. And the production value for a lot of that stuff's crap, but it doesn't matter because the content's there and it's showing me how to do something. And Whereas I'd be looking through manuals before, and I'd still be using the internet to go find that stuff, or downloading the original Ducati service manual, for example. But now it's just, there's a guy I can see exactly which nut I'm supposed to do and which one I'm supposed to talk to this. And,
yep,
you know, that's what it's become. And it's this huge, vast swathes of content on absolutely anything and everything.
Yeah, I mean, I find myself largely going less to Google now and more to YouTube, because I want to visually see what it is that I'm researching, and you can generally find it. And, you know, if you're replacing a washer or a nut in a, you know, in an appliance, a washing machine or something, there's going to be a person out there who shot a video on it. And then you're going to get pissed off because of what we do for a living and they don't have the right camera angle. And you're like, can you use at least your cell phone's, you know, flashlight and the camera in the right angle so I can actually see where that is. But the reality is that it's a very different world. But then we come into we're all creating content and talking about content so that we can help people get better at the tools that they're using and also at their craft. So from that standpoint, Caleb, you know, where do we fit in? And it's not just you, me, and Ben in terms of the content we're creating, but where does our value lie? You know, why is it that we are getting better at using these cameras and understanding composition and lighting? You know, where will our value be if we're not YouTube content creators in the future, which is, you know, where your focus is primarily. But if you're trying to get work out there, you know, where does that all fit? How do you see that happening?
I thought it'd be interesting to, and I think the answer to that question is to essentially go down the list of job titles on a film set.
Okay.
And think and figure out which ones are obsolete and which ones are safe. And then factor in the market and technology, because those are the especially technology. That's the big one with our phones. Yep. You know, someone said at the beginning of the stream, we're all going to be using digital sets. I 100% agree. We're kind of already doing that with green screen, right? I mean, you look at the behind the scenes of Marvel. Mm-hmm. Most of these people, they just spend, you know, 6 months of grueling hours in a green screen room.
Yeah,
that's their life, right? Mm-hmm. So, you know, set design is going to take a huge hit. There's a lot of losers and several strong winners. I think if you're an editor, you're gold.
Matt Workman's going to win.
Yeah. Timing. Yeah. Timing is still important. Obviously, writers, storytelling, the cop-out answer, you know, storytelling will be forever. And it will. It's all about storytelling. Doesn't matter what sensor you use.
That thing you were just saying, Jem, about what's going to differentiate us or what's going to differentiate people like us is because that there is so little of that in particularly in marketing stuff, and I think that will be. So
and a big one. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No, I remember that thought. I think what you're saying is absolutely fascinating because it's not something I've really thought about. But when we look at movies like The Lion King and Avatar and The Jungle Book and that way of filmmaking where you're essentially in a large warehouse and then the camera operators have an entire world that's already been built. They're essentially in the video game universe and they're moving their cameras around in there. That requires a skill set. And if we do move to a place where in the type of work that we do, you get a medium to larger size company and they say, you know, we want to do this cool thing where we basically do our whole conference from, some other world. We want to make it look like we're on Mars, or we just want to make it look like a really amazing architectural space and it may look photorealistic. There may be things that we can get into if our timing is right and we learn those skills as people who understand how cameras work. We understand lighting. We understand how to move cameras. This could be another area of content creation for us. Sorry about that, Caleb. It's kind of a fascinating, because we're just seeing it on a big scale right now with feature films, but that will trickle down to us with the Cine Tracer. And then, I could take my barn and then I could turn it into a virtual studio, and we could basically buy a stock world or a stock set and put people into it, and the quality would be so much higher than green screen. Don't you think?
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, maybe not higher, but easier.
Well, more immersive,
right?
and more immersive.
Absolutely.
You can do things,
camera. Yeah, the real losers in this game, if you will, is going to be camera movement. So the dolly operator, the people who have trained their whole life to move a physical thing. Unless the people who, unless they can take up jobs training all these digital people how to actually move, how do you put emotion into something that moves? But I think a lot of that's going to go away. It's going to work its way up, right? So lighting, a DP where the frame is, lighting, that's going to be here forever. I think, it's interesting to think about. If you just go through the whole thing, if you're in audio, you're good to go for a while. A good mic placement is still good mic placement. Making a voiceover sound like they're on a mountain versus in a booth like this talking into a microphone is still going to be incredibly valuable. But it's Cine Tracer. I think everyone, if you want to survive for the next 100 years in film, I think you need to be thinking like Roger Deakins thinks. The fact that he will, in an interview, he'll pick a fight with somebody who's like, it must be film. It always must be film. And he'll say like, essentially, screw you. I'll make a movie with an iPhone. There's several of those interviews. They're awesome. He likes to, sure, let's shoot with LED lighting. Just get crazy. And he's like, when was he born? He's like in his 70s, right?
Yeah.
That's the way we got to think. And instead of being like, oh, everything's going to these dumb iPhones, it's exciting.
Well, he was one of the consultants on WALL-E, and they brought him in as a DP to understand how they could build their digital systems from a lighting standpoint to be more realistic in terms of how it worked. And I mean, that's way before he shot, Time's Up on the Alexa, and he made the transition fully to digital as a cinematographer. And so I think it's pretty amazing. Ben, when we talk about sort of, our jobs and our roles, this might not be the next 5 years, it might not be the next 10, but where do you think we need to focus as content creators to make sure that we're ready to be able to take on new opportunities in production? And that's not me coming in here and shooting an educational video. It's not you going out on an oil rig, and it's not Caleb doing a stand-up on, on some products and talking about and breaking down different product categories. If we want to move more into that thinking process, what do you think we need to be doing right now?
Well, the time frame, as you were saying, it's very difficult to see how close that is. And then I guess from me and you in our 40s as to at what point do we survive on our current sort of way of doing things and our current skill set. I think at the moment the thing is that we've just got to keep up. We've got to keep an eye on what's going on. We've got to keep up with the technology that's coming along. We've got to understand it, and we've got to work out where that's fitting into the kind of work that we're doing and how it's going to change things, and be ready to start slowly incorporating it into what we're doing. I don't think we can do any more than that at this stage.
Yeah, what fascinates me is that you look back at the old computer guys, right? And they're old now, but back in the 50s and 60s they weren't old, and those people. Those men and women know more about what is going on right now with computing than anybody else, because they were there from the beginning. They understand how code was written. They understand how machine language works. They have very much a futurist, I think, viewpoint. And I think that one of the things that we need to put into ourselves is that we're always building our skill sets, right? We're always learning. And if you learn how a camera works, then all you have to do is learn the operating system of how another camera works. And if you learn how light works in terms of hard versus soft, modifying the direction it comes from, then you will be able to take on and use newer fixtures pretty easily. And I think that right now might be a good time to start to jump into something like CineTracer, where you start to figure out, like one of my, and I've talked about this in the past, one of the brick walls for me as a DP is I don't have the opportunity and I don't get to work in large scale productions. I don't understand sometimes how a cinematographer goes in and they light 4 to 10 city blocks and they make that look cinematic and they have all of that. Now, of course, I do know that they work with an amazing, grip and electric department, and that those people have an inherent understanding, and it's a building of and a relationship of. But Richardson, who just shot the new Quentin Tarantino movie, says every single time he goes into a movie, he's absolutely terrified. It's like the land of unknown again. And you look at this guy and you look, it's not just Tarantino who he shot with, Scorsese, all these other people. And you think, how can that person be terrified in terms of it? Because it's an always learn in our industry. But I think, jumping into something like CineTracer gives all of us this opportunity for $80 to go into big spaces. And I've heard and seen people knock that application. I think it's an amazing learning tool. I go in there for a half an hour to an hour, and I have a much better understanding of where I might place fixtures and talent if I were lighting a scene in a big environment like, 3 city blocks. So I think it's amazing. Have you played around with that at all, Caleb? At all? CineTracer?
No. I love Matt Workman. I'm heartbroken that he doesn't make YouTube tutorials anymore.
Oh, his breakdowns were amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't had a moment where I've thought of something better or haven't thought of something better to do with my $80. That's what it costs, right?
Yeah.
Not to say it's bad at all. It's where he's headed is amazing. It's just needs a little more love, to dial in. I almost bought it to figure out my studio because I don't know about you guys. Have you ever gotten you've been working with the same sensor size, roughly the same rooms and same lenses for a while, and then suddenly you go full frame or you use a smaller sensor and you change things up and you're triggered? So I've been using micro four thirds in a small space with speed boosters, and now I'm moving to a bigger space, and just, it'd be nice to have all of that digitized, and I could just go in there and mess around instead of spending, you can easily spend an hour just moving a camera around a couple times, or a whole day for that matter. So
do you have fun doing that though, Caleb?
I do, but
yeah,
I still got to make videos, right? So I would love to just take a week off and just figure stuff out, but
sounds amazing.
Doesn't that? We should start a camp where it's just an auditorium with all these different flats or apartment or sets, and then just million C stands and fixtures, get Aperture to sponsor it, and then boom,
revitalize the Filmmakers Intensive, but just make it it's 10 to 20 flats, and you just get in there and you get to move from one to the other. You get 1 hour in each of those sets.
Welcome to the medium format.
That's a great idea.
Fuji set.
That's brilliant. Big warehouse, 20 sets, and you get an hour in each set.
Good food. It's a week long. There's movie night. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
No alcohol. You won't get anything.
So a quick 2 things I was thinking of.
Okay.
One, obviously we're talking I feel we're going to see all this stuff hit first with Disney and Marvel. That's the front lines right now. That's kind of where things are going. And then the second rung, and why I think all of us will be dead before this fully hits, fully, is Netflix and Amazon Prime and all that stuff. They're not Marvel. They're not Disney. There's going to be right now there's a ton of work if you know the right people in those kind of quick turnaround, high production value shows.
Yep.
So that's the good news, is there's a lot of work to be had there. And heck, if Netflix and Amazon, if there's going to be 50 of those, you know, soon, which could totally happen.
Yep.
Like if all that just goes to YouTube and Netflix is like, remember when people watch Netflix and now you can watch it for free on YouTube?
Yep.
Maybe that'll blow up and we'll have, you know, 50 years of just tons of high quality content for free, but it's advertised obviously, and we'll be good to go. But I think that bleeding edge is going to be that kind of Marvel and what Disney's doing, where you're starting to see it's all green screen.
And Apple is making huge investments into content now too. So there's a lot. I mean, I've said this before. We're a golden age of television right now. Yeah. Where it all plays out in terms of how that content gets distributed is the big one. You got I mean, Netflix just lost Friends. That sounds like no big deal, but that is a huge deal because of how many people watch Friends, including 11 to 13-year-olds.
The most popular thing on Netflix, apparently, or has been until now, until it's gone back, and I can't remember which network in the States has it, but they're now producing their own sort of streaming service. And I was reading an article which was really hinged on that announcement about Friends, and saying that what this golden age that we're in now, whereas you can have Netflix and you can have Amazon, and you've essentially got this enormous collection of stuff, is going to expand out into probably 9 or 10 subscriptions that you're going to need to have a similar level of access to content as we have now. And what that does to it and how that dilutes the money that we're spending with Netflix will be interesting to see.
I have a couple things to say real quick.
Yeah, I'm ready
about this, because I've been thinking about this way too much.
Getting excited. I like it.
Okay, so here we go. First, in the second most watched show is The Office, and that's going. And the third thing that's being watched the most is all the Marvel movies and Marvel TV shows on Netflix. And Disney pulled those. Can you believe how much they paid for that contract, to cancel that contract?
No.
I know this is a big difference, but it was $500 million or $1 billion to get out of that contract. Can you believe that?
But you know what?
So that Disney could start their own version of that.
That's nothing, though.
It's nothing, but I mean, that's still like, holy cow.
Yeah.
But for us, and Disney is going to rewrite the quality of that stuff. Netflix is doing some amazing stuff.
Amazing.
But Disney recently announced they're doing new shows. Loki is getting his own show, that character from Marvel. Hawkeye, all these characters. And at first I was like, they're going to make some cheesy show. And then I was like, wait a second, this is Disney, who's got $1 zillion. So we're going to see a new level of content, or entertainment in TV format.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, the last thing I'll say is, I think there's a massive conspiracy theory. This is about to get weird.
Whoa, here we go.
With all this, I think all the networks are starting their own version of Netflix and Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
Just to drive. Now all of us are spending $150 a month, and then we all go back to cable. Or Comcast, who owns like everybody and is owned by Disney, I'm sure. It's just like it's all connected,
we're all
man.
Gonna go back to Disney.
There's 5 guys in a room, 5 fat guys in a room who make billions a year, and they're like, you know what? Let's just do that. Okay, that's what's happening.
And we'll make a lot of money for a short period, and then we'll just consolidate. I mean, let's be honest. In my opinion, I might be wrong here. I think Netflix is going to become the independent film channel. Because when you think about what Disney's going to do, they're going to do it on such a large scale with so many brands, everything from Lucasfilm, Star Wars properties. They've got Marvel, they've got Pixar, they've got everything that's Disney. And now they're just starting to generate all of these other properties from there. It wouldn't be a bad stock to invest in right now, even as expensive as it is. I think Disney right now is going to be going up.
Well, they run out of original work to remake.
Yeah, well, you know,
let's be honest.
Wait a minute. That's never stopped Hollywood before, Caleb.
No.
Come on.
and then Netflix will keep coming out with like they'll find I think they'll be around for a long time. You look at like Stranger Things.
Yeah, no, they are. They're going to become
They're finding incredible talent.
Incredible,
which is awesome.
Yeah. And in some ways, for someone like me who's very into the stuff that they're making themselves, and I'm not into Marvel stuff, and I'm not into the sitcom stuff so much. So if all that gets separated out, and I'm paying same or more slightly for content that I'm really into, and it all gets down into sort of more categorized, I'm all right with that. But I'm not sure quite how it'll pan out, whether that will be the case or not.
Yeah. David says Amazon will play almost anything. I think that's true, David. We'll see. And they'll probably pay money for it too. So we'll see how that all goes. They're also creating some great original content. There's no question that Amazon is doing some great, great stuff. So I think it's time for us to spend the last 10 minutes. I'm going to jump over to Caleb to look in the chat here, and let's have a little powwow with our friends over here.
Tony, I think a good question. What's the future for businesses like Ben's? More to come,
or more of
change?
The same. Yeah.
What do you think, Ben? Have you noticed a shift in the last, 10 years?
It's difficult because I think the way that I've sort of tried to market myself, or the kind of work that I've gone after, has changed. So I think the stuff that I was doing, I don't know if there's less of that now or not. I think I'm doing different stuff now, and what I'm doing, or the bulk of what I'm doing, is very specialized. So it's hard to say. There's definitely more people in the market for it now. That's certainly the case. And it was the same with the photography side of things now. I don't think I could make the living that I used to make as a purely stills photographer now, because the market's just absolutely saturated. And this was, and we've talked about this in previous episodes, but for me, it's really been about finding a niche, and there's 2 or 3 industries that I work in. So one of that's oil and gas, some of it's tourism, but that's really, those 2 industries cover the vast majority of what I do, and you become known for those. So I think in the sort of short to mid-term, those things are specialist enough to keep getting work, but long-term, who knows what happens. And again, I think it's the danger is always that people get a camera thrust on them as part of their other duties, and this thing that I was talking about with 360 cameras, that I see a point at which, when we're getting to the resolutions that are high enough that you can just reframe anything, that they're going to, that's how things are going to be done. People are going to be given those cameras, just stick it here, we'll record what's going on around, and then we'll make a film. It'll all get sorted in post. And as we've been saying throughout this conversation, that there'll be more work in post than there is in the production side.
Do you think editors will have to become cinematographers?
Well, it'd be interesting because they normally whine about everything we shoot. So if they're having to make those decisions themselves.
Well, that's an interesting question. More and more people who show up in my workshops are actually from the post side, because they're being expected to go into the production side. So because there's so few people, and so they're spreading it thin. My recommendation always to companies is no. Keep post separate, not because we don't want the post people in production. Some of them are highly skilled and transition well. It's because if you're trying to have people do production and post-production on a regular basis when you're turning out content, it becomes a very inefficient system. It's a very hard system to make work in that way, because how are you going to then plan for your next production, go into your production, because you're so focused on the editorial side of it. I think there's 2 comments in here that are worth having you guys make comments on. David Cadell Music. The more pressing issue is, as content creators, we are dependent on social media trends like YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. These things change quickly and can die before you know it. Do you think that's going to have a huge impact on the success or failure of a company and their branding efforts? Caleb?
Oh, yeah. Well, I think the companies will always just be on whatever's hot, right?
Right.
So I think it's the creators will feel it. Feel it.
Yeah.
But the companies don't. They don't care. Right now, it's Instagram and YouTube. They'll do that until that blows up, or flip a whip, takes over, and no one does Instagram anymore. They flip. I don't know. Just making this up. And then they'll move on. But the people that like make a living making one thing, those are the people in danger.
Yeah.
Like the guys who used to do DVD menu creation.
Why are you making fun of me? I used to teach DVD menu creation. I used to teach people how to author DVDs.
And a huge amount of my income in the first third of my career or quarter was just that. Film something boring that people want to rewatch and put it on a DVD with menus. Boom. But people like that's where you're in trouble. Like, and if you have a degree in that, then what are you doing with your life?
Right.
Yeah. Well, I think that, and you see people that specialize in those things, but I guess people just need to learn whatever is the hot thing right now. And it's one of those things that you still think of yourself as being sort of in touch with what's going on with the generation underneath. And I think that's clearly not the case when I look at the way that my kids are consuming content and the trends that you assume that the way that we consume social media is the same as the way that they do, and it's not at all. And I think keeping up with that, and I think having people around you that are of that generation is important.
Yeah, like everyone's into, what is it, Fortnite?
Yeah,
like they did a Fortnite.
My 11-year-old is. Yeah,
Fortnite.
Won $1 million or something.
The one kid won $3 million. But they're doing concerts, like real concerts, but only in the game. Like there's an actual concert somewhere but they're only broadcasting it through the game.
Of course.
Like crazy stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, so Caleb, can there be another YouTube, or is that ship sailed?
It's going to happen. The main thing is Google owns YouTube. I don't think they even make money on YouTube, honestly. I still don't think they're making money off of YouTube because it costs a lot to put those billions of videos up or whatever. But someday, once the technology catches up, where someone like Dropbox or another small company can actually feasibly do it, it'll fail, no doubt. Once it's cheap enough to do what YouTube does on the technical side, somebody's going to make a better version of it. The question is, how long is that going to take? Because that's once we're all buying like 300 terabyte thumb drives, that's kind of what we're talking about. Once the technology catches up, it'll definitely go away for sure.
Interesting. Good things.
I think so.
Ben,
it's going to be a while though.
I don't know. You've just got such enormous saturation there. I would see it very difficult for anyone to infiltrate that to any kind of major degree. I think if YouTube, and I don't really know the inner workings of that, but if they're savvy enough that they're keeping up with things and really pushing things forward, I mean, sort of maybe long term, but I think short to mid term, the dominance is just way too much. We've had this conversation about Vimeo and how that's really been wiped out for a lot of our use. I mean, it's still there and it's still going, and I'm still using it reluctantly. But I don't see anything really in that midterm. Long term, who knows?
My feeling on that is I absolutely don't know. I mean, I think it can take a few people to launch a platform. I think that the success of a new YouTube will rely heavily on current YouTube stars and them jumping ship, and then maybe that creating an opportunity for a new wave of creators, because some people will not jump ship and they'll stay on the platform they're on and think, if I stay here, then I'm going to have that big audience. Other ones will say, F it, and they'll go off and they'll start their own thing. As we wrap this up, I think that the one thing that we can conclude is almost absolutely nothing, by the way, but that there are lots and lots of content opportunities still available to us. I would say that for me personally, that it comes down to what is it that you're interested in and pursue creating content in that area. There will still be a version, I think, of the T2I people going to Alexa. It may now be going from Alexa to having a grasp on and how to do work for people in virtual worlds, and then a combination of that and doing real world production. It may be a hybrid that I can't think of. There's no question, though, that all of us will be using these tools along with those higher end tools for our production in the future. And you bet your bottom dollar that when portrait mode hits video on an iPhone, that I'm going to get it. And it doesn't mean I'm going to stop using other cameras, but it's going to be there. And if I can shoot a home movie on a phone and I can make it look like it's at a 1.4 with my kids and not at an f/22, then I'm going to do it. And the sensors will get bigger and better. Thoughts from you, Caleb, as we wind this down?
Oh, man. Yeah, just, I think that's on point. Figure out what you love doing and do that. Honestly, if you're going to get in content creation, right now is kind of the last ship I think is about to sail, in that it's time to get started, do it. And the last thing is education. People always need to know how to do all this stuff. So that's one form that'll never really go away. Somebody, 20 years from now, someone will still be making a video how to reprogram your key fob. It'll just look beautiful and out of perfectly stabilized and at f1.0 instead of I got this ski here and you gotta stick a screwdriver. Hold on a second, let me put the phone down.
Honey.
Yep.
Beautiful. All right, Ben, what you got? Parting words.
I think the same. Very hard to really conclude anything. The mobile technology is definitely where things are going, and I've been doing a lot of research for phones. I hate my phone at the moment. Someone had mentioned the Huawei, the one that's kind of not available anywhere because of the issues in the States with it at the moment. But the P30 Pro, and the way they've got round the form factor in being able to give more flexibility with that. I think it's 3 or 4 or maybe even more lenses on it. I think that's all fascinating. And but as we've said, you still need to know how to compose stuff. You still need to tell stories. You still need to know how to make that stuff look good. The tools alone, not enough, but interesting. I think we're all safe for a little while.
Yeah.
Good. I echo what Caleb said. Education. People need to learn. And it's not just how to replace a part in a washing machine. And if you have interest in creating content that teaches people about things, there will be a growing market for people who know how to do that well. It's definitely my lane, though my lane has to do with teaching people how to do things having to do with this industry. I'd be really interested taking those skill sets into helping people, educate people about other things, because I think there are a lot of similarities in terms of delivery and just breaking down how to take sometimes very complex subject matter and make it understandable by lots and lots of people. So with that, I say adios to my good friends. Love you guys. Everybody on the chat here who has come by. Any goodbyes from Caleb? As always, he gives the best goodbyes. He's like the best hugger. You're like a good hugger.
Oh my
so
gosh.
What do you got? Come on, you are. I mean that in a good way.
Folks, it's been a joy. It's been an honor. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you want to see these 3, I almost said beautiful, but faces. Take it or leave it. I mean, Ben's gorgeous. Look at that key light.
Oh wait, hold on. Let's just stay on Ben. Every week, his little F7 into that bounce. Look at him. There you go.
All right. So we're skipping next week. Week after that, we'll be back with a burning passion, and we appreciate every one of you, every single one. Thank you so much for watching, and Godspeed.
Good night,
gentlemen. Cheers. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Caleb, and all the best to everybody. And we'll keep it on. Pretty Boy over here as we stop the broadcast.